Here's a quick view of our new motorized skein-winder. It's approximately a month before shipments occur, near the end of August 2011. But we wanted to give you a view of how this product has turned out. For these shots, I have the unit in the floor stand. This is a shorter floor stand than we normally use, and I have it up on a table so I can get a decent shot of it. Now we've removed the radio frequency remote control. We're going to only announce this initially with a wired, the cable running to the control panel, and I'll show you that in a second. We may eventually also offer the radio frequency, remote control, similar to what I'm holding here in my hand right now, which is a remote control for the camera. But at this point, we're not going to announce it, due to some delays in the development of it. The unit will use a control panel which has been taken from our power base unit. Same exact control panel. Gives you stop, jog, run, increase and decrease speed, and also a save function. That control panel is connected via an Ethernet cable. It's a standard computer cable with a nice hefty plug on both ends. So if you wanted to run a longer cable, this is a 3-foot cable that I have on here now, but if you wanted to run a longer cable, you certainly can do so. Basically, the system is a bolt-on, well, it's not really bolted on, but it's connected to the vertical section of the existing skein-winder. And it's a wood housing, dovetail joints, like our power base. So it's very sturdy. It's made of hardwood. And that particular housing there includes the motor and the pulley. It also includes the tensioning adjustment mechanism, which I'll show you in a second. And you can see below the metal electronics control box. Okay, we've got cables running to that right now. We may end up dressing that a little bit better with those cables, but basically that's got your power going in and 2 jacks. One jack goes to the ERC, which is on top of the skein-winder. That's the electronic rotation counter. The other one allows you to connect the electronic yarn meter. So that's something we didn't anticipate initially, but we've added that capability. So those of you who have an electronic yarn meter don't need the ERC if you don't want to have the ERC, although I think you should for a number of reasons, and I'll go into that in a minute. But basically you can control this motor drive on the skein-winder with your electronic yarn meter. A little hard for me to get into this shot right now, but basically your motor's inside that box, the pulley's in there, and then the belt comes up. And it goes up to another pulley on the end of the shaft that drives the skein-winder. Of course, the ERC is on top of the unit as well, and that's connected via data cable to the motor control box. So here's where you would set the number of yards, meters, or rotations. When the unit counted up to that number, it would then turn off the motor drive. I'll show you that in a second. What's pretty neat about our system is we have a single knob on the front of the I-beam. And what happens is you loosen that knob, and then you can then slide up the wooden housing, which includes the motor. And by raising or lowering that, you put more or less tension on the belt. So it's something that you can adjust. If your belts stretch over time, you can adjust the tension. You can put more tension on if you want and have more traction and less slippage. So a pretty simple but very effective system. On this side of the unit you have a master power switch. That's the one with the red showing. And then behind that we have a reverse switch. That switch will probably change in its styling, but essentially that's a reverse switch. You would throw that switch when you first start out if you had a setup that required that the unit go in an opposite direction than what it normally does. And that would from that point onward, have all motor action going in that direction. There's your connection, your cable connection on the ERC. Comes out of the ERC and connects to the back of the the I-beam system. Here's a quick demonstration of how the ERC will shut down the motor drive. I've entered a number of 20 rotations into the ERC. You probably can't see it on the screen there, but I've entered the number. And we'll start the unit up. Got 10 speeds on this unit. So as it hits that number, it's going to sound a beep and shut off the unit. Now, one thing you don't see on this unit, but what the final production model will have, it will be dynamic braking. Dynamic braking is when that stop signal is sent to the motor drive. It'll stop all motion within a second and a half. And right what you just saw there, you saw what probably equated to about a 3 to 4 or 5 second rotation because of the inertia, because of all the mass that we're rotating. You know, by the time it comes to a stop, it could add another 10 yards or 10 rotations to the unit at high speed. I don't think I was actually running at high speed, but I can assure you that if you're running at maximum speed, which I'll turn on in a second here, it could rotate another 10 turns after we shut it off, and that's something that's not desirable. So with our dynamic braking system, which will be all done in the electronics, as soon as that system sends a signal to the motor drive, whether it be from the EYM, the electronic yarn meter, or from the electronic rotation counter, or from the stop button on the control panel, doesn't really matter where the signal is coming from. It'll stop all motion in a second and a half. Now, why do we have it stop in a second and a half? Why don't we just stop it immediately in its tracks? Because that would be really bad for the yarn. You know, if you stop abruptly like that, you know, what's going to happen to the yarn as to where it's coming from, for example. You know, that particular device, whatever that may be, it could be a cone or something else, that's going to have some issues as well due to a rapid stop. So we figure that, you know, we have to give it some leeway, and we've decided about a second and a half of rundown speed, and that's at high speed. That's still pretty quick. You know, it's like in your car. You know, when you press the brakes on the car, when you're driving 60 miles an hour, it takes you about 200 feet to stop the car. So, you know, it's a similar situation. Even though you're stopping abruptly, it still takes time and distance. And we'll have a similar situation here, but it should be a relatively small amount of rotations or yards that are still accumulating during that period. Now, the unit's running at maximum speed right now. We've put a modified pulley and belt system on this unit, plus a high torque motor. That will run 190 RPMs now. We originally had a 130 RPM design goal, but by changing the ratio of the pulleys and using a high torque motor, we can go 190 RPMs. So if you're putting 2 yards on for every rotation, that equates to 380 yards or meters, doesn't matter which one because it's the same rotation effect. 380 meters or 380 yards approximately per minute, and that's got to be the fastest skein-winder that's in existence as far as we know for commercial use. So and it's very powerful. You know, the system will slip if there's a problem, but you know, at that speed, you know, you want to make sure you don't have any issues. But it will get a lot of work done, and we'll get it done very quickly. Here I'm running it at the lowest speed in a normal run condition that it can go. And you notice it's going clockwise at this point. If I want to change the direction of the motor at this point, I have to shut it off, turn the power off, throw the switch. This is for safety reasons now. Put the power switch back on, and then hit run. You'll notice it's going counterclockwise. Now, that's not normally something you would do. Normally you're going to set up your Swift or skein-winder and you're going to be running in one direction. But, you know, we realize that we can't determine in all cases which direction people are going to use it in, so we have to provide that capability that you can reverse the motor. So this system does have that capability, and it's done electronically So it's very safe. You cannot harm the electronics by switching that, but we do encourage you to, in fact the system will only recognize the change in direction if you first power it off, change the switch setting, and then power it back up. Now we also have jog. Jog is a slow speed arrangement. You know, it's very slow. It has 5 speeds in jog, so that's the lowest possible speed. And that's if you're doing some type of setup. Now in jog you can also go temporarily into a reverse mode, but it's not going to be in a high speed mode. Every time I hit jog at this point, we'll go in the opposite direction. That's helpful if you have a jam somewhere and you want to clear the yarn back off the skein-winder. Let's say it got out of, out of sorts, so to speak, and you have to untangle it. Then you would put it in the jog reverse mode, as opposed to changing the general direction on it. So this is the first speed of run. I haven't calculated the RPMs on that, but it's it's going a decent amount. But that's speed number 1. It goes up to 10 speeds. So that's really cranking right now. You don't want to get in the way of those arms, and that brings up an issue of safety. You have to be careful when you're using something like this, so you don't have anyone sticking their hands or arms in the way, or have their hair caught in something like that. So obviously you have to take a lot of great care when you're using a piece of equipment like this. Men, you don't want to have ties on, and women want to make sure their hair is restrained in some manner. So that's our new motorized skein-winder. It'll be shipping, I hope, near the end of August, maybe the very early part of September, but certainly in that basic time frame. And when it hits the market, it's gonna immediately take a leadership role, because it's got the electronics on the measurement systems. It's got the automatic control features. We can shut it off. It can be shut off by our electronic yarn meter. It can be shut off by the electronic rotation counter. Either device will shut it down when it reaches the number of yards that you have entered into those devices. It's got reverse on it. It's got dynamic braking. It's built very safely, with DC power. We're not using AC power going to these motors. So the power supply is very similar to a laptop power supply. And so there's very little risk there of some type of electrical hazard. So anyway, we think it'll be a real winner. And as you can see, it's on the floor stand. This is an abbreviated floor stand. We'll have it available on possibly two higher stands there. That'll put it up much higher than it is. Of course, this is on a table, but you also can run this unit on the table with the standard table mount. Either way, it'll work fine. It'll work exactly the same. So we're looking forward to getting it shipped. And if you have any questions, be sure to give us a call. Thanks.